Is it possible to retire completely financial freedom in 3 years from rental properties or real estate in general? That's what we're going to be talking about today with my good friend, Cam Cathcart. What's up, Cam?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm pumped to talk about this topic because this is something you actually did.
Yes.
Sort of.
So
I mean, you still work, you're not retired, but you probably could.
Yeah, we increased our cost of living quite a bit.
By moving to Hawaii and coming hanging out with me. Mm-hmm. But like, tell me about your story real quick. How did you, in 3 years, obtain financial freedom?
Yeah, so the quick version of it is I read your book.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, actually, no, it was David Green's.
No,
yes,
no.
He wrote the BURRR book.
We're ending this video right now.
Yes,
he did write. He wrote the BURRR book.
Even though it's your thing.
Whatever.
Did he ask permission for that?
He did.
He did.
He was nice.
Okay, yeah. So I read the BURRR book because at the time we didn't have any money, and so I was blown away by like, hey, this is actually a strategy that people use and they can do it. And so we did our first one in our first BURRR deal in January of 2020. And the numbers on that were like, we bought it for like 75. We put 30 into it. So we were all in for 105. We used a private money lender that we had to pay like $4,000 to. So we were all in really for $109,000. We got it appraised at $150,000. Took it to a bank, cash out refied at 80% LTV. So we even put like 10 grand in our pocket, had this house that we didn't spend any of our own money on, and it was cash flowing $200 a door. We got done with that one. We're like, this is amazing. Let's just continue to do this as many times as we can. And so over the course of the next 3 years, we just did that over and over. So 2020, 2021, 2022, we did that probably 45 to 50 times.
Wow.
Yeah. And
so what did your cash flow go from zero?
Cash flow was at zero. And then we, at the end of 3 years, we were cash flowing about $130,000 a year.
Dude. So it is possible to do, everybody. You can build financial freedom quickly. Now that was 2019, 2021, 22, you said?
It was 2021 and 22. And we were getting locked in on a 30-year, 10-year fixed, 30-year AM at 4%.
Yeah.
Which you just can't get anymore.
Right? So that means it's impossible to get cash flow nowadays?
Not at all. There's a lot of different strategies that you can use. If you're going to use the BURRR strategy, I do think that there's only a certain few areas in the country that you can still do that in.
Yeah, which we'll talk about that in just a few minutes. We're going to talk about actually 5 different strategies you can use to get cash flow, because constantly strategies change in real estate. You can never rely on what worked 10 years ago because things just change. The industry has changed, the market changes, the economy changes. So we're going to get into all of that today. Real quick, my story, I actually did not get financial freedom in 3 years. It took me 7. Because I didn't have the same knowledge, experience. I lived in this small little town. I didn't have the internet right to the same level we have today. Didn't have the podcast that we have or YouTube. And so it took me 7 years to get that kind of level 1 financial freedom. But what I want to emphasize is once I decided to scale, decided to ramp up and get into some cash flowing vehicles, I went from 30 units to over 3,000 in 3 years. So I scaled that way very quickly. It just took me what, total of like 10 years, I think, to get 30 units. And then it took me another 3 to get to 3,000. And now I'm at over 13,000. Yeah. So that's just hockey stick. Yeah. Like hockey stick curve. Yeah. Yeah. I completely hockey sticked. And I don't want to go real deep on how to build a 13,000 unit, portfolio, which I have other videos on that. Make sure you subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you want to, see more stuff on that, because I love talking about scaling. But today I want to talk about how to go from basically nothing to financial freedom, early retirement in 3 years. How would we do it? And I want to start by the discussion real quick of cash flow versus appreciation, because you brought up an important point earlier about which one should people focus on. This video is about financial freedom, so we're probably talking cash flow.
Yes. So I think that when you're starting, you can choose one or the other. You can choose, hey, I'm going to build a cash flowing portfolio, or I'm going to build a appreciating portfolio. Honestly, for our portfolio, we did choose that we wanted it to be an appreciating portfolio. So most of our properties are in Class A and Class B areas. Now, I think we could have been cash flowing quite a bit more if we had said, hey, we're going to stick to Class C, Class D areas, buy properties for $40,000, put $20,000 into them, rent them out for $1,200, $1,300 a month. We could probably be cash flowing quite a bit more, but those would all be still worth $60,000, $70,000, $80,000. Whereas the majority of our houses have gone up $70,000 to $100,000 in the equity that we have in them over the last 3 years.
And there is a way to get both, right? Like you're not buying in California, and we'll talk about that a little bit later too, like the market specific, but yeah, you're not buying in California where there's no cash. Like you can get cash flow on those deals that are in nice areas and appreciation, right?
That Class A, Class B areas in the Midwest and the Sun Belt, I think is the perfect marrying to cash flow and appreciation, like you said, because in California, you're not getting cash flow at all. You might get massive appreciation. I'm not getting the 20, 30% a year over year appreciation. I'm getting the 7 to 10%. 2020 and 2021, it was 25. But that's not happening anymore. So.
Yeah, I think we're going to see a lot less reliance on appreciation going forward. I mean, I still think there's a lot of room. America in real estate is going to keep going up. They just don't have enough housing. There's too many people. It's just going to go up, supply and demand. But I don't think we're going to see the 20% every year kind of stuff we've been seeing the last few years. So we need to rely then, therefore, on cash flow. We can't just rely on appreciation to bail us out.
Well, and one of the things, just a quick point on that, where you're talking about that real estate's going to continue going up. Like what we saw just a couple days ago, one of the worst days in the stock market's history, which is still up. Looking back, it's still up, but like real estate hasn't really been hurt at all. I think real estate's the most protecting asset.
Right now, for sure. I feel super strong. Now we might see a dip in some markets in some areas, but long term, I'm still a big fan.
Well, and if you buy that's the beauty of cash flowing too, is if you buy a cash flowing real estate, rents typically don't go down a ton.
Yeah, not much.
And so
if at all.
If you can buy a cash flowing asset, even if the market dips, like you're cash flowing. So hold on to it for 5, 6, 7 years and you'll be.
Yeah, very true. So let's talk about how to get cash flow. Now, one thing I like to think about when talking about cash flow, we were talking about this earlier, is you can either buy cash flow, and I'll explain what this means in just a minute. You can buy cash flow, you can find cash flow, or you can make cash flow. Let me explain what I mean by that. Let's just say you had $10 million, like in cash, which I know you probably don't. But you have $10 million. You could go and just buy an apartment complex for $10 million and probably make about $500,000 a year in cash flow. That's about the return you'd probably get. So you just bought your way into financial freedom. But let's just assume that most of you out there do not have a lot of money to just go and put down and buy a property for cash or put a heavy down payment down and buy cash flow. So that means you're left with the other two options. You can find cash flow or you can make cash flow. The difference being finding cash flow is finding properties like you did that just make sense. The numbers just work and you put, maybe a down payment, maybe you do a creative way, but it's on the market or it's easy to find. And it's just like, oh, there's an off market deal right there. I'll just buy that one and put a tenant in there. Good. That is incredibly difficult, like you said, in today's interest rate environment.
Yeah.
It's hard to find it. So we're left with one option, and that is we have to make cash flow. You got to be creative about putting deals together that actually make money. And that brings us to, we have a list here of 5 strategies for making cash flow so you can retire in 3 years. You can get full retirement from rental properties in 3 years and using one of these 5 strategies. So I thought we just kind of burn through each one at a time. You want to start?
Yeah, let's start. So I think the first strategy is a strategy that I love right now. And we did a podcast with a guy who specializes in this, but it's rent by the room or co-living. And you can buy a property off of the MLS. So this is what's crazy. I was talking to this guy. I don't buy anything on the MLS because it's just overpriced. It doesn't make sense. I can't cash flow that. He can still go buy properties on the MLS and then do a small little rehab on them, like basically walling up a kitchen or a living room and creating more rooms, and then rent those rooms out for $700, $800, $900 a door, and he can cash flow like crazy. His average house that he's buying on the MLS is cash flowing $1,000 a door. So I think co-living is an incredible opportunity right now.
I agree.
I think the market, you have to be careful about the market that you're buying co-living in, because in St. Louis, which is the market that I invest in, it's not going to work because you can go rent a 1-bedroom apartment for $800. Yeah. So it has to be those higher end. He's in Charlotte, but Austin, Denver, LA, somewhere where you can't rent a 1-bedroom apartment for under $1,800 a month, I think is what he said. Is like, those are the areas.
It would kill it here in Maui.
Oh, in Maui? Yeah. I mean, people do it. I know it's kind of against the law, but
let's talk about that. The law. So different areas have laws set up that many people argue are based on racist philosophies in the past. We won't talk about that in depth, but they make it so you can't have too many people in one house. They say, hey, you can only have 3 unrelated people, 4 unrelated people. Now, those laws are changing across the country. They're getting struck down left and right. Like Denver, for example, just completely removed all of their restrictions on it.
Because it prevents affordable housing.
It prevents affordable housing.
Yeah, it is somewhat...
There's no Yeah, there's no problem with having too many people other than some cities. So you do have to be careful with that. You have to figure out how you do it right. And there's ways that people find loopholes through to be able to get it done right. But just make sure if you're going to go the rent by room route, make sure you look at that carefully. One quick note on that, there's a company called Pad Split out there that does this. It's kind of like a property management firm for rent by the room. And so they kind of help curate all this and help you do it. Side note, I have a lending company. We're called Better Life Ref. We actually do pad split loans. And so if you're, I don't know if you even knew that.
I did not know that. That's amazing.
So if somebody's interested in doing a rent by the room and they want to go through you got to go through pad split right now. They're like our approved partner. But if you go through them, we can get you a loan on a pad split property.
Well, and one thing with pad split that I know, and this is super interesting with how to kind of the loopholes with the laws, is they'll help you set it up to where you actually have a fraternity that owns the house, and then the people aren't paying rent for the actual room. Right. They're paying a membership to that fraternity. And so then you don't have to abide by the laws.
Yeah, there's little loopholes that you can do. So yeah, very, very cool. But rent by the room, pad split, that kind of stuff, very cool. If you want more on the lending, just go to Better Life Ref, REF, that stands for real estate funding, betterliferef.com. Check that out. Moving on, number 2. What do you got?
Ooh, short-term or midterm rentals.
We'll combine them in the one.
Yeah. Short-term or midterm rentals.
What's the difference?
So short-term is going to be like your Airbnb, your VRBO, the things that you are renting out short-term. Typically, it's for a week stay or less. The midterm rental, which I love midterm because you're short-term, there's a lot of laws that also prevent that from happening. But there's not for midterm, where it's a lot of places it's got to be a 30-day stay or more. And so I love midterm for especially traveling nurses.
Yeah.
I think traveling nurses is a huge market right now, where they're coming in, they're working at a hospital, they're getting their, whatever they're making at the hospital, but they also get a housing stipend, which is usually pretty high. And so having a house next to a hospital that you're renting out midterm to nurses, and they're also going to take care of it. A lot of times there's a placing agency that's even placing them. And so they're going to force them to take care of it. So I like the midterm route, but you typically get 2 to 3 times your monthly long-term rent by doing one of those strategies. And in an area like Maui, or an area like Florida, or and I think Gatlinburg is dropping a little bit, but like in Tennessee, you could get 5, 6, 7 times your monthly rent. And
just because you have it furnished and it's not quite a year-long commitment, people will pay more money for it. So
I do think there's something important to talk about though with short-term rental, because it's become such a sexy topic that anybody's like, oh, I can just buy a house and I can rent it out and I can make a lot of money. And if you're going to do short-term and or midterm rentals, that's your job. You have to focus on that, because there's so many strategies that will increase the not the vacancy, but the occupancy of that house, whether it's how it's furnished, if you have kids' toys in there, what the backyard looks like. And so I've seen a lot of people that are like, I bought a house in Gatlinburg because everybody said that was the place to buy, and I'm not making any money on it. And so you have to know what you're doing. You can't just dive into it without any education or any resources and be like, I'm going to retire in 3 years because of these.
Yeah, short-term used to work back before there were laws about it. Anytime there's a new industry brought up, the government takes a while to catch up. And so back when there was no laws around it and nobody was doing it, it was really an inefficient market. And so people were just cleaning up. There'd be one Airbnb in town. And so of course they get booked for a high rate. Today, there's a lot more of them. So what I actually like to do is I like to buy Airbnbs in areas that are heavily restricted. The laws have already passed. So they're not going to come up with new laws most likely because it's already restricted. And then I'm not saying do it illegally, you find ways to do it legally. So for example, Denver, they outlawed short-term rentals for the most part. However, if you live in the property, just like Maui, actually similar, if you live in the property, you can have a short-term rental next to your house. So all of a sudden now you can buy a house and live in it and then rent out the other unit, because a lot of houses have extra units. And now all of a sudden you're cash flowing. One Airbnb could wipe off your entire mortgage and then some. So there's little loopholes like that.
Well, I know in some places they grandfathered all the people that were doing it in. And so if you buy one of those houses, you can buy the LLC. So then that transfers over to you. So there are
little loopholes.
There are loopholes to do it. And I agree with you 100%, where it's like, if it's regulated, there's less competition.
Yeah, I like when it's hard. That's fun. That's what she said. Moving on. Number 3, Midwest BURRR. This is one that you added to the list because it's something that you built your portfolio. You already mentioned the story earlier, how you did it, but maybe you can explain what is BURRR And like, why is that? What is a Midwest house BURRR?
Do you want me to explain BURRR? I feel inadequate explaining BURRR.
Yeah, you do more BURRR than I do.
So the BURRR method is buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. Buy, renovate, rent, refinance, repeat. So it's essentially you're finding, and what I love about this method, I could talk about this for 10 hours, but what I love about this method is for someone like me, when I just started, didn't have any money. And so it's a way to do it with no money, literally no money. You can use hard money or private money lenders to fund the deal, and then you can pay them back on the refinance, and you can have cash flowing properties. And so you find a house. So this goes back to the beginning where you have to find it. So you have to find an undervalued, distressed house somehow, some way, whether that's from a wholesaler, an agent, direct mail marketing. You have to find an undervalued house. You have to buy it at typically about a 50% discount from say it's a $200,000 house. You have to be buying it about $100,000 because you're going to fix it up, and you want to really be all in on that house between $150,000 and $160,000 because that's what the bank's going to give you on the refinance. And then you rent it out and you take it to a bank and say, hey, I've got this house that's worth $200,000. They say, hey, I'm going to give you 80% loan to value on it. You take that money, you pay back your private money lender, and then you go do it again and again and again.
Yeah, because you're recycling the money, you can repeat it over and over and over and over.
Exactly. And really, if you have great connections with private money lenders and or hard money lenders, you can do 5, 6, 7, 8 of them at a time if you have your systems dialed in to be able to do that.
So why Midwest house BURRR and not American house BURRR?
So right now it is the Midwest house BURRR because I don't really think it works anywhere outside of the Midwest.
Yeah, it's incredibly difficult.
Unless you were going to do, like, I think we could come up with a new name, like STR BURRR or a house or a co-living BURRR.
Airbnb BURRR.
Airbnb BURRR. Yeah, exactly. Like you could, so you could do that, but
not traditional straight rental.
Yeah, the traditional BURRR method does not work in probably 70% of the markets throughout the United States. It does work in St. Louis, but it's gotten a lot harder. It works in, some cities I can think off the top of my head is like Tulsa, Oklahoma City, St. Louis, Little Rock, Arkansas, Des Moines, Indianapolis, Columbus. Some of those markets where you can still buy properties at $100,000 and you still can get decent rents on them, then the BURRR method works. But throughout, like if you're on the East or West Coast, you're just not gonna get close to
the $500,000 house in Seattle, it's gonna rent for $4,000 a month, but
then you're gonna be losing money. $1,000 a month.
Exactly. So one other thing I'll say about the BURRR that's really fun is that BURRR is scalable. So how did I get to 13,000 units is like I largely BURRR'd my way there. You can BURRR a single family house. You can BURRR a fourplex. You can BURRR a 20 unit. You can BURRR a 500 unit. Like you buy a property, you fix it up, you make it much worth more money because you fixed it up and you increase the rents. In fact, it can work even better with commercial real estate like apartments and mobile home parks because you fix it up, you improve all the rents across the board, and then now you can go to a bank and get a whole new loan for it. And the beauty about doing this at the higher levels is that you can get the original loan. Like when you do it on a single family house, you got to do a hard money loan. Hard money is like short, it's really high interest rate. But if you're doing it on a multifamily that's just valued bad because they just haven't been taking care of it, you can get still a good 30-year mortgage or 25-year mortgage on the initial purchase. So you eliminate that, like, I got to get it done in 1 year or else my loan's going to expire. So it can be actually less risk to do it on a bigger deal. Now that's a whole different game of remodeling a 100-unit apartment building.
Yeah,
but
it's a big
lift. But it's something that you can scale into. So maybe you do a BURRR this year, a couple BURRRs this year on houses. Next year you try a small multi, and then in year 3 you buy a 80-unit mobile home park. You BURRR it, and that thing prints off $10,000 a month in cash flow, and you're done.
And you're retired.
You're retired in 3 years. Number 4, assisted living or sober living. We'll kind of combine them together, even though they are different. I just wanted to make sure we hit both of those. Assisted living, meaning you're taking care of elderly people is typically how it is. Now, there are a lot of different levels of assisted living. I'm not saying you have to be opening a nursing home here and have a full-time doctor on staff. There's a lot of levels of this, and it is a business. So you are owning both a real estate and a business. And the business can rent from the real estate, which is kind of cool. But the business can really print money. I got a buddy who does assisted living, and he won't buy a house. Like he buys single family houses with a lot of bedrooms, so it's kind of rent by the room. He won't buy one that doesn't make $10K a month in profit at the end of the day. Like now it's usually burying them somehow because you got to remodel them, you got to fix them up. But one house could make you $10,000 a month in cash flow. Think of that.
That's insane.
It's insane.
I wonder if it's the same guy. What's your friend's
Mitch.
name? Mitch? No.
Different guy?
Not. Yeah. So I have a friend who does luxury assisted living. And he doesn't even call it assisted living because it's for people. It's for elderly people, but it's not for people that need nurses 24/7. So he buys a multi-million-dollar house, and then he can rent out the rooms for like $7,000 a room a month, and then he hires a full-time private chef that's there that cooks their meals for them. They have events every day for people to go to. They have a full-time nurse that's there to help with anything, but it's not the people that need 24/7 care. And these places print money.
Yes.
It's insane.
And it's a huge opportunity because there's so many old people retiring every single day. Every year, millions of old people are retiring. So it's like, where do we put them all? They're going to live a long time.
Yeah, and he did something like fascinating, which again could lead to retirement in 3 years, where he bought one for, and I'm going to butcher these numbers because I don't remember exactly what it was, but he bought it for $1 million. He spent $500,000 rehabbing it, getting it compliant with everything that needed to happen. And then he had these people coming in and renting the rooms for $7,000 a room, and there's like 6 or 7 bedrooms. And he was able to take that and essentially flip not the house, but the business of it. And he made $2 million on it, where he just basically took that house and the people that were renting there and sold it and made $2 million. And then you can take that and invest it into a fund or something and rent 12%. You're retired.
You're doing it. I love that. But sober living, very similar. But sober living, you're dealing with people who are recovering alcoholics or narcotics. And again, it's a business, but one neat thing about sober living is there are a lot of nonprofits and for-profits that exist that will just run it for you, and you just own the real estate, and you can get some pretty decent returns. Now, I think to be able to do that and retire in 3 years, you're probably gonna have to operate, and so I don't want to spend a lot of time talking about that. Last one. Let's talk about the flipping idea.
Ooh, I like this one.
This is different than the other ones.
This is very different. It's still within real estate, but you can build a flipping business. And
that's not passive, man. That's not retirement.
It's not at first. Definitely not at first. But you can build. I think that if you went into like saying, "Hey, I want to build a flipping business and be out of it in 3 years, and it's still just print money for me," you could do that.
I agree.
You'd have to be solely focused on that. You would have to have a roadmap planned out, systems in place to, hey, I'm going to hire acquisitions managers. I'm going to hire project managers. I'm going to hire an integrator. I'm going to hire a CEO. And I think that if you really dedicated like your core focus towards that, to just say, I'm going to build a flipping business that I'm eventually going to exit, and it's just going to be there and print money for me.
Yeah.
I think you could do that in 3 years. And so it's not owning, the business is the asset, but it's not owning houses. It's just within real estate, you're building a business that's going to cash flow for you.
And the beauty of that is that you can kind of cherry pick the best deals that you're flipping, and you can keep them as rentals, and you can combine the strategy with the other ones. And so flipping can actually be a really interesting, I guess, way to do that.
Yeah.
And so I know that's one thing like you do in your business is you guys flip a lot of houses, but you also keep some.
Yeah, that's why we started flipping houses, because we were doing the BURRR method and we were passing on a lot of deals that didn't necessarily work as a rental property, but I was like, this will make a ton of money as a flip. So we just started flipping properties, and it works. It's so cohesive where, hey, we're looking for off-market properties that are typically distressed that we can buy at a discount. And then once we buy those, now we can figure out the exit strategy. Does this work for a rental? Does this work for a flip? Does it work for a wholesale or a wholetail? And so you have multiple different options, but everything works within that organization, I guess.
Yeah. Beautiful. To close out that point, there's a lot of businesses out there that can be passive income in retirement, and you don't have to sell. If you build it right to the point that you could outsource yourself from it entirely, you can have a business that you work an hour a month at and produces enough money for you to retire. And so I just give that perspective that there's a lot of opportunities out there. So you don't necessarily have to exit a business in order to get out of it.
Mm-hmm.
So, all right, let's move on and kind of close this up with this a quick four tips on like a how-to. If you want to take action on something we talked about today, how can we do that? I've got this kind of like 4-step framework. They all start with the letter D, and that is to decide, to get deal flow, to get your debt figured out, and then your disciplines. Let's talk about each four of those real quick. Number one, decide. That means you have to decide and commit to like one strategy. What are you going to be the best at? And then what location, what condition, what price range. Like you really want to nail down your buy box, your strategy in your buy box, right? If you're building one bridge, like a bridge from one island to another, you can build one bridge, but if you build two and you're only one worker, you're going to work half as fast. Like each bridge builds half as fast. If you've got 10 bridges building at the same time, you're just you're just playing whack-a-mole with them. And it takes 10 times longer. So what I always recommend is get laser focused on one bridge and just build that. Once you hit financial freedom with that bridge, or you hire enough people that's building the bridge for you, fine. Now you can maybe add a second bridge. But a huge mistake is people try to build too many bridges. They get 20 feet out into the water, and then they start with another bridge because they get bored.
Yes.
Yeah. Or they get excited about a new niche.
So deciding what you're going to do, that leads perfectly into the next part, which is deal flow. Because if you don't decide, now you don't know how to find deals for that.
Yeah.
So like if you were to, hey, I'm going to focus on Airbnb properties in this market, now you can start building the second part.
Without that clarity, you can't decide how to get the deals.
No, exactly.
All right, so that's number 2 is deal flow, and that's also coincidentally the name of your education company.
Yes.
Deal flow is what?
Deal flow is something that I've gotten really good at, because going back to the beginning, like I found deals. That was my sole focus, laser focus was finding deals. And so I got really good at finding deals, and I want to tell other people about finding deals. And so that's the name of my company. But to get to where you want to be in 3 years, you have to dial in deal flow. And what that looks like in the single family realm is networking with wholesalers, networking with agents, with property management companies, senior living facilities, probate attorneys, all of these different areas where you can just get free deal flow. And then you can also do off-market, direct to seller marketing. We use direct mail. We do retargeting and SEO, all of that good stuff. But finding deals, I think, is the most important part to any of this, because if you can't find deals, you can't do any of it.
Yeah, great point. Dealflowrealestate.com?
Dealflowrealestate.com.
So if they want to know how to get deal flow and have you help them with that, that's how you do it.
Yes.
All right, the third D is the debt. In other words, how are you going to pay for it? And there's a lot of creative strategies. I wrote a book on it. David Green wrote one that's apparently better. Mine's called The Book on Investing in Real Estate with No One Low Money Down. If you have the money, you can get a loan on a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of other strategies. We already talked at length about the BURRR strategy, so we don't need to reharp that one. But I guess the bottom line here is, if you can find a good enough deal, you will find the money for it. You'll find the ability to get the debt for it.
Yeah, one of the interesting strategies that I'm using right now for debt is because, again, cash flow doesn't make sense, where I'm bringing in private money lenders to help cover the 20% down payment. And then I'm giving them a return on that 20%. And then I'm using bank financing for the rest. And I'm not making a ton of cash flow. Actually, I'm making a very small amount of cash flow, but I'm owning the asset and it's appreciating over time. And so there's just so many creative ways that you can use money for.
Yeah. So, but focus on getting good deal flow, getting your leads coming in, and you'll figure out the money. You'll figure that out. And there's a million books and podcasts on it. We'll probably do another video here on YouTube just on that. So, and the last of the 4 Ds here is your disciplines. Now, I don't mean like discipline, like I'm going to discipline you for not doing something right or wrong. I'm going to talk about the disciplines as in like the things that you do when people aren't looking, right? It's the things that you say. I am somebody who, I wake up at 5 a.m. or I wake up at 7 a.m. I don't know. It doesn't matter. I analyze deals every day. I go to real estate meetups. These are disciplines in your life, and they're things that we want to define and track. Are we doing them? Or are we not doing them? So what are the disciplines for a real estate investor? I mean, what are some of the different things that a real estate investor should be doing on a regular basis? I named a couple of them.
Yeah, I mean, analyzing deals.
Analyzing deals is huge.
Making offers. I think that's the biggest one is like,
are you making an offer?
If you're making offers, one's going to get accepted eventually. Making offers.
Reading books. Business or real estate.
Education
in general,
is huge. You said something to me 2 nights ago when we were cold plunging and sauning that I think is so...
Is sauning a word?
Sauning?
I think it is.
Sauning.
We made it a word.
But I think it's so important for real estate investors, and I love it, is like, if somebody had a gun to your head and were to say, hey, you have to be financially free in 3 years, like, what are the things that you would have to do that would for sure make you not fail? I'm butchering how you
like what would guarantee success?
What would guarantee success in that?
Yeah.
And when you think about that, like for instance, we were talking about health because I'm just not where I want to be. And you're like, what would guarantee success? And I'm like, well, cutting out fast food, cutting out alcohol, cutting out soda, cutting out, like working out, getting 10,000 steps a day. Like, and I know that if I just did those things, I would be healthy. And it's the same way with real estate, where it's like, I know for a fact that if I'm going to, or somebody on my team is going to a networking event a week, if we're sitting down and having coffee with wholesalers and agents 3 or 4 times a week, if we're analyzing 20 deals a day and we're putting out 10 offers a day, like we're going to buy a lot of houses. We slack on that sometimes just because it's hard. Yep. That's the discipline part. We slack on that sometimes, but I know that no matter what, if we do that, we're going to be incredibly successful. And we just sometimes don't.
Yeah. So the question I ask when I'm coaching people, I always ask them like, how can you stay persistent and consistent? How do you stay persistent and consistent? Meaning persistent means like you don't give up, and consistent means you do it over and over and over and over on a regular basis. You can do those two things, do the right actions over and over and over. Long term, you get the results. How do you do that? I mean, there's a lot of ways. I track my habits. That's one thing I do. We do that in the Better Life Tribe. But also the Better Life Tribe now offers like one-on-one accountability coaching. So we have like actual accountability coaches. You can hire one person, just like that My Body Tutor that I'm a big fan of for my health. Body Tutor does that to get me in shape. Better Life can do that. The Better Life Tribe or Better Life Accountability Coaching can do that to make sure somebody's checking up on you every week, every day. Hey, did you go to the gym? Hey, did you analyze those deals? And so if you're interested in that, just go to abetterlife.com. That's the letter A, betterlife.com, and learn more about that.
Love that. And I think one last thing about this is just to almost guarantee success is, and I love this saying, it's that long-term consistency is always better than short-term intensity.
Yeah, agreed.
And so I see that a lot with beginners where it's like, oh, this is awesome, I'm going to go all in. And they have these huge goals, and they're in a month, they're going to every networking event, and they don't buy a deal, and they're like, I'm out. And for me, I'd say, well, hey, let's do a little bit less, but make sure that you can do it for the next 3 years. Same with working out. I am notorious for this, where it's like, I want to get in shape, so I'm going to starve myself. I'm going to go run. I'm going to work out 2 times a day. I'm going to lose 15 pounds, and I'm going to get worn out and burnt out. And then I'm eating McDonald's the next day. And so like, focus on like, what can you do for the next 3 years, especially talking about 3 years to retirement. What can you do for the next 3 years every single day? Yeah. And then just do it.
Yep. I love it. All right, everybody, if you found this helpful, make sure you give a little thumbs up or like button below the video, and subscribe to this channel if you care about real estate investing without losing your soul, how to do it the right way, how to do it ethically, and have a lot of fun doing it. That's what we do. That's what we teach. My name is Brandon Turner, and this is
Cam Cathcart
signing off.